My story starts when I was in high school. A family friend of ours had served in the 60s in the Peace Corps in one of the first groups. And she worked in the Dominican Republic and in Haiti. And hearing her stories and her challenges and her connections that she made inspired me to start looking when I was only 16. She had continued her work in Haiti and the DR long after she left. And those connections and the impact that she was able to make beyond just the Peace Corps were part of what inspired me to start looking. So I went to college to be a math teacher. And somewhere throughout there, I decided math teaching wasn't for me. And I changed towards environmental studies. So when I applied to the Peace Corps, I told them I wanted to go to the South Pacific and do environmental work. And they told me that I would go to sub-Saharan Africa and teach math. So in November of 2008, I got on a plane and I went to sub-Saharan Africa to teach math. I taught math for 2 years in Namibia. When I talk about the Peace Corps, I never sugarcoat it. It's hard. And for those 2 years, you have extreme highs and extreme lows. But for every low, there seems to be at least twice as many highs. Some of the challenges that I faced on a daily basis were in the classroom. Teachers didn't come to school to teach, they would come and skip class. And if they were in the classroom, they were often beating their students, using corporal punishment methods I wouldn't have even dreamed of. Outside of the classroom, faced another challenge. I buried students, and I buried my host mother. Funerals happened every weekend. It was something that you couldn't escape. But for all of those challenges, the connections that I made and the friends that became my family definitely outweighed them. Learning the chores that my students had to do every weekend, they would pound mahangu, it's a grain, they would pound it into flour. That was one of my favorite things to do. And it provided me the opportunity to get to know them on their terms. I wasn't their teacher anymore. I was sitting with them and sharing their food, and I was working with them. But in the classroom, we didn't have that same relationship. I was their teacher, and they did see me differently. They started sharing their fun activities with me as well. We would swim in the river, and if you served in the Peace Corps, you know that's probably not allowed. That was another one of my favorites. It took a little bit of convincing to get me in there. I told them, I don't want to get eaten by a crocodile. I don't want to get killed by a hippo. They said, Madam, no, the water's too fast and there are too many rocks. Logic wasn't something that was strong there. But it wasn't so much about the challenges or the highs in the end. It was what you did with them. And so when I was sitting in a staff meeting and the principal told us, all of you female teachers, we have a problem. You need to start buying menstrual pads for your female students. We kind of looked around the room and shook our heads. Well, this is another one of his crazy ideas where he's just going to tell the women what to do. But it created another opportunity for me to learn about that challenge. Something that every woman faces and that we take for granted, the accessibility of sanitary pads. And so I started asking questions of the teachers. I learned the cultural stigmas around it, that they couldn't prepare food when they were menstruating. They couldn't share a bed with their husband. They were considered unclean. And as I got to know my students more, I could bring that conversation to them. I could ask them what it was like for them to find sanitary pads when their family wasn't working, when their parents were making less than $1 a day. So this is a short video of some of those questions that I asked.
Yes.
I used to wash my old clothes and
Yeah.
them together.
Toilet paper and beds. The money which I can use to buy pens and toilet paper, they are saved, and I can do something with my money that are saved. And these pens, they are looking good.
Yeah.
They can stay for a long while.
Yeah.
So initially, the idea was to get just enough pads for those girls that the principal was talking about. But disposable pads didn't seem like a good idea. It wasn't something that would last, and they were going to have a challenge with the disposal of them afterwards. But it took me a little while to find a better solution. It took 2 of my students coming to me in the middle of the school day with a stain on their skirt and saying, "Madam, my skirt." They didn't even have language to use, or they didn't know the words that could describe what the challenge they were really facing was. And in the middle of the school day, without access to pads, they were sent home. And I didn't see them for up to a week because they didn't have anything to manage their menstruation. And so the second time that happened, I got on the internet and I started trying to find something that would last longer than one disposable pad. And I was able to work with a company in the US called Glad Rags, where they hosted me on their website, and I could fundraise for pads to send to the girls at my school. And our goal was to get 250 pads, 1 for each of the girls, and they could be washed and reused for up to 3 to 5 years. And I would be hosted on their website for 2 months. So whichever happened first, 250 pads or 2 months. I got 250 pads in 2 days. So 2 months later, I had 1,400 pads, and I was able to provide pads to 3 schools. So I got back from the Peace Corps in December of 2010, and 2 months later, I launched Empower Women in Africa. We have provided cloth menstrual pads to almost 2,500 girls now, less than 2 years later. We've sent pads to Tanzania, Uganda, Kenya, South Sudan, Ethiopia, and primarily Namibia. And we continue to work with Peace Corps volunteers to distribute these. Most recently, we've been able to start working with the Ministry of Health and Social Services in Namibia, and they're recognizing the impact and the need so that we can roll this out on a nationwide basis. Currently, all the pads that we send are made in the US, but we have started working with 7 women in Namibia who are interested in making the pads themselves. This way, we can help them start a business to sell a needed product locally. So this will provide jobs for the women, a market for the pads, and the product for the girls who need them. Through this, we can create community transformation rather than just giving the one product. We've also started talking with a manufacturing company in Egypt. They normally will make clothing for Walmart and Kmart, and they are interested in giving us or selling us these scraps to all their clothing production so that we can lower our costs for material. And so that begs the question of how you can make that impact, whether you're looking to join the Peace Corps or whether you've come back and you want to stay connected. We're always looking for volunteers. Grant research, sewing pads, and fundraising events are 3 of the biggest impacts that you can make through our organization. Empowering girls and women has been shown to be one of the best ways to create community transformation in the developing world. And so it's up to you how far you would like to go with your service. And if you need one last plug to join the Peace Corps, I did meet my fiance there. Thanks.